Morning everybody, and welcome to this joint committee meeting of the Association of South Essex Local Authorities. It's good to see everybody. I'll go through apologies now, but I think we have a couple of people running late. But is there any apologies that we're aware of? So Councillor Baggett is running late. Sorry, Councillor Cole, yes.
Thank you very much, sir. I will be standing in for Councillor Dave Blackwell, who's away on a meeting.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you very much, Stephen. Okay.
Sorry.
Hello, yes.
We've also got apologies from Councillor Coxshaw and Sharon Bayliss.
Of course we have, yeah. Okay, good. I don't think there's anybody else. I think that covers it, so that's noted. In terms of declarations of interest, we all know the rules around that. If there's anything coming up that you've got an interest in, please declare it, and we'll get all that out in the open. Okay, item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Those can be seen on pages 1 through 8 of the agenda pack. Are all those present happy that or that we see those as a correct record of what was discussed previously? Is that agreed? Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, Chairman's opening report, item 4. It's just a verbal update from me. A few things we want to talk through, and we'll might make this a bit interactive and conversational, not really over-scripted, to be honest with you. Obviously, I don't want to dwell on the national picture too much, but we are in difficult times. But as far as I'm concerned, ASELA knows its purpose. We know the things we're focused on, and we continue to pursue those things. We also know, and the question's been asked about how some of the other issues in South Essex around Thurrock impact ASELA. I've been very clear. Thurrock are absolutely remained a very much on-side and vibrant partner of ASELA. Mark can't be here today because obviously he has got some work to do at Thurrock, but it doesn't change what we do, and it doesn't change the structure of our partnership and our association in any way at all. So, and actually what's really happening in there, which is positive, is people in this room from other local authorities are really rallying around and supporting Thurrock, and that's what it's all about. That's what we do as a team. So to me, it's really showing the strength of ASELA at this time, and I think we're all really, it's actually drawn us together quite strongly, which is quite a nice feeling actually. In terms of looking at our programmes, I touched on that in terms of our purpose and everything else. What I'd like to propose we do at some point, and I'll cover this now, but it's not on the agenda, Scott, if that's okay, and we'll talk about it, maybe have a brief discussion about it now, is I think the time is right for us just to regroup and look at our strategic priorities. And that's not to change them, because I think when we're talking about economy, skills and growth, transport, infrastructure, housing, digital connectivity and the environment, these are all the right things. But I think what I really want to do is look at how are we maximising the impact ASELA can have in those areas? Are we maximising the way that we work together to have a positive impact in those areas for our community? So what I really would like to do is look at how we take it to the next level. So within the next 3 weeks, Scott, if this is okay, and other officers, I want to take a morning out. I want to get us all in a room. I want us to get to really think it through in the context of not only what we're trying to achieve, but what's happening around us, the pressures local government are under, the economic situation, our own financial situation, to look at how we can maybe take this level of collaboration in these themes to the next level. So I've spoken to leaders briefly about this morning. Everyone's up for it, and we really think now is a really good time to do that. So there will be a date to follow, Scott, if that's okay, but we'll do it in November, preferably before the mid-part of November, or around the mid-part of November if we can. So that's important. A couple of other bits just to mention. Investment zones, as we know, we do with what we know we can do today. As far as we're concerned, the government have a strategy around investment zones. They came out to local government and said, give us your expressions of interest. And Essex has done that. Southend have done that as another tier 1 authority. Obviously, Mark's not here today to talk about that. That would be separate anyway. But Kevin, could I come to you just to talk about the Essex submission, and then Stephen come to you to talk about the Southend submissions? Just some comments around that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. And although the Upper Tier Authority has put in the submissions, it's done complete collaboration with colleagues around the county in districts and cities and boroughs. And I just want to pay tribute to all the staff, all the officers who had about 2 weeks to put this together into a proper submission. I hope you've all seen that. I wrote to certainly all the district leaders in Essex, but Stephen and colleagues, we've been talking as well. I think it's a fantastic submission. I would say that, but I actually generally mean that. Given the 2 weeks only, I mean, people have just literally had to drop everything and go and do it. To put in that submission of that quality and that scale of time, I think is breathtaking. And it's very good. So I'll just speak about the Essex one. Thomas here, who sort of coordinated everyone to put that in, can add any comments, or anybody else come to that who was involved in it. We've put in 4 areas, broadly geographic, so into the north around the Clacton area with the Freeport East, to the south the A127 corridor, the A120 corridor, and over to the west in North Weald. The expression of interest is that. So when I wrote to her, and I was very clear that we have to keep confidentiality about this because there are businesses and also district plans involved in that as well. But expression of interest doesn't mean detail. So what it means is that these are the areas we think we can help with what the government's plans are. We need more detail from the government on what those plans are, and the red line for me has been that I don't think any of us are in a position where we can financially pump prime any of this. So I want to be very clear with the government, if they're looking to us to do an awful lot of work then to make their mind up later, that's not a goer for us. We need to be very clear and have clarity from the start. The good news is back in 2010 we had enterprise zones, and Essex was heavily involved with Harlow District Council and indeed East Herts when it came to the garden community over there. But the enterprise zone you see in Harlow was a great piece of collaboration. This does work. This absolutely does work. And if you look at the enterprise zone in Harlow, it is a first-class development with some world-class educators and also companies there as well. So this can work. So we've sat in, that's gone in. We're waiting to hear. I know there have been informal conversations with officials, and I believe that they like what we've said. That's not to say they're going to give it the thumbs up. That's up to ministers. But we're looking certainly before Christmas to have the go or no go on any of these.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Councillor George, do you want to comment on Southend's position?
I'll just give a quick update on where we are in Southend. Our economic team submitted, a submission around the city centre itself, with the potential to link up with the area around Southend Airport, which is obviously in Rochford and Essex, but we have that potential to expand.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Just a bit more on the opening remarks in terms of investment zones from me. There seems to have been, I think we've all picked up on it, a response from environmental groups, wildlife groups, etc. around this narrative or this mantra they've pulled up about an attack on nature. And I've had some communication from Essex partners such as Essex Wildlife Trust, etc., raising concerns about that, shall we say. But I have gone back and been clear that actually the submissions that have gone in from Essex at least, I can't comment on what went in from the rest of the country, but we were certainly very cautious to make sure they were either included or part of the local development plan already, or indeed they were brownfield sites. So as far as I'm concerned, and Adrian, maybe we look at this as a comms piece afterwards, there is no way that Essex as a whole, their expressions of interest around investment zones are an attack on nature. And I think we need to make that really clear. It's come out of somewhere. I'm not sure why. I think somebody started the mantra and it's been seized upon without probably much basis in fact. But it is incumbent on us just to be absolutely clear about what Essex has done in terms of our submission and how they do not at all constitute an attack on nature. So we need to do a bit of work on that, ASELA. I think we can lead on that in terms of communicating with our community groups, etc., residents, that is certainly not the case. So, okay, that was just a final comment from me. Thank you, Stephen and Kevin, for your contribution. We're going to get into going through the update reports on the projects, but I will repeat what I said last time, is whilst the projects are absolutely important, and in many ways we're making real good progress on the projects, I won't steal the thunder of Scott and co as they'll update us later on, but we absolutely were looking at projects are one thing, but we don't want to be project orientated. Projects sit under a theme of progress. So, for example, South Essex, in terms of the technical uni, or whatever we end up calling it, all sit under the remit of economic growth and skills. And we discussed last time about leaders taking on those roles, and I will update you all that we've all agreed that subsequently. So everybody's got their place. Kevin's going to lead on economy and skills. Mark's going to lead on transport and infrastructure, housing. Stephen's agreed to lead on. Dave Blackwell's delighted to lead on digital on connectivity, and Councillor Baggott on the environmental piece. But take the environment. There's lots of, and that's why I want us to get together later in November. The environment is a huge agenda, and Sea Park is a project within that. But actually, what are we doing around waste? What are we doing about CO2 and carbon reduction, etc.? These are other things that I think we need to look at under that umbrella. Sea Park is part of it because it will absorb carbon and it gets people using sustainable methods of travel. We get all of that, but I think there's multiple things we could look at. So it's going to be a great opportunity to reset. But we're still going down that route. The other vision I think I've got for this is, I think what we need to do is, for example, when we talk economic growth, it's not just about having Kevin and Scott in the room and a handful of others officers. Actually, let's just pull our senior economic development officer together from across the 7 authorities and get them in a room. They're all signed up to ASELA. They all know what ASELA's driving at and trying to do. And I think we need to bring them in the room. And that's because we can collaborate better, share ideas better, and share the burden better if we do that. So that's certainly something I think I want to do, rather than just putting all of the weight on leaders and chief execs as we are sitting in this room now. There's some real talent in our local government organisations, and I think we need to draw them into this regional approach to doing business as well. Scott, have I missed anything?
No, Chair, but I think that was an excellent update. Just really to add to it, I think it is a perfect time. In 2 or 3 weeks' time, we may know a bit more about investment zones. Certainly gives an opportunity for the new lead sponsors to get more involved in understanding those themes and how we involve the programmes. And I think your last point is critical. If we are serious about delivering these themes, these programmes of South Essex, which have been developed well, we really need to then embed that in the organisations. And I think your point, very valid there, is that we shouldn't be reliant on any one leader or one chief exec to lead these programmes. They are the growth strategy for South Essex, so it should be the growth strategy for each and some of all the parts of the organisations. So you're happy to set a date, Chairman, in a few weeks' time, and I'll work with you on that.
Thank you, and I think I'll add that all the leaders and hopefully the officers we're really excited about this prospect of doing that, taking it to the next level. And I think in the context of the other conversation around devolution as well, it's a good time to do it. It's a good time to think about how we fit into the overall Greater Essex piece as well. And if we can do it well here, we're all very caring and sharing in Essex, and we want to support colleagues elsewhere in the county. If we can do something and share best practice with them, then we're more than happy to do it. And Kevin, you'll know about conversations that are happening elsewhere, but we're really excited about wanting to take this to the next level. The time feels absolutely right to do it. It's a great opportunity for us. So hopefully we'll try and agree a date in about next 3 weeks' time that we can all make. But I'll make no apologies. I think we really need to consider a good morning, sort of half day out of it, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, good. And if anything else to add, Vice Chair? Okay, good. Let's move on through the agenda. I'm conscious some of us have got appointments this afternoon, so I'll try and move on as quickly as we can. So item 5, beginning on page 12 of your report, is an update on the finances. Elizabeth with us. Hi, Elizabeth. Can I just turn to you to give us a couple of the highlights and maybe receive any questions from the committee? Thank you.
Hello. So since the previous meeting, we have had the Homes England funding of £250,000. Sorry.
No, it's just coming.
Apologies. So the £250,000 agreement with Homes England has been signed and sealed. I am just waiting for the money to turn up in Southend's bank account. So that is really positive news, and that is reflected in the report. So that brings this year's position into a surplus, which offsets last year's deficit and brings the ASELA position, the reserve, into a net £2,000 forecast surplus by the end of the year. There have been some other grants agreed since this report was drafted, so they'll be reflected in the report to the next meeting.
Okay, good. Well, that's certainly good news around Homes England. We talked about that for a while, so we're pleased that is in. In terms of the general financial position, it is what it is, and it feels like it's in a comfortable place. We're there to do a job, and we've got the resource to do that, is my surmise on it. Has anyone else got any comments on the finance piece in terms of the report that's in front of us, page 10, etc.? No? Lovely. So nobody's pulling any red flags up. We're all there. We're resourced. We can move on and do what we need to do. Okay? Good. Hopefully I'm not oversimplifying, but it seems that way to me. Okay, good. Let's move on then. We'll go into the programme updates. As I say, we've got these projects. We call them programmes. We'll work all this through. We've certainly got them in front of us. It's absolutely appropriate that we see how they are progressing. And we'll do that. But I certainly think next time we get together, when we discuss these things, I'd like to really discuss them in terms of a more broader strategic theme. These updates still need to happen. We still need to keep an eye on the progress of our projects. But I think there's certainly other things that we can be tackling under things like environment, economy, etc., etc. So the first item I've got in terms of the highlight reports is the Sea Park, which is item 6, begins on page 13. Is Sharon with us? I'm looking around the room. Who would lead? No, Scott, do you want to just comment on?
Yeah,
Sorry, I know it's not your programme, so I don't want to drop you in the deep end. I'm not expecting a detailed.
No, hence why I look forward to the review in 3 weeks' time, Chairman. I think, again, apologies from Sharon who couldn't be here today, but I think what the headlines for this is, it's really good timing for that review, because the business case, which certainly leaders have been asking for, and under now Councillor Baggott, as I think you said as the sponsor, will look at that business case in 3 weeks' time at their way down, and actually look at, as you said earlier, in the current climate, looking at the business case. We've got the Pathfinder that is being delivered, but clearly with resources and funding being tight, how do we look at it in the current climate moving forward, and how do we look at a different way of resourcing Sea Park, which I think is very important. The point you made earlier around investment zones and having that green lung, which is always the point of Sea Park. So how do we keep the momentum going, but look at it maybe in a different way? So I think the timing of the session 3 weeks will be really useful for us all to understand the opportunities in the business case moving forward, and how it would be funded to deliver the ambitions of the Sea Park programme.
Thank you. Have members got any questions? I've got a couple of quick questions, but if anyone else got anything before I do? Simon, thank you.
Chairman, thank you. I just wonder, in these updates, and I appreciate that on this particular occasion, Scott is deputising, he's covering for someone else. But I think it's important that as we go through these programmes, we link the expenditure. Whilst I didn't have any particular questions on the financial statement itself, I think it's important that we actually understand the costs associated with each of these programmes, where the income stream may be coming from, is if there is a specific income stream, and where the expenditure is, because I think that helps us get some perspective on it. Thank you, Chair.
Scott, will you?
Yeah, I'll come back, Chair. I think it's a really good point, Councillor. One of the things that I've tasked now is with the other chiefs is, let's look at one, that we don't focus so much on highlight reports in these presentations. We spend more time getting under the programme and looking at quite clearly, when we look at the financial report, it is quite a finance-driven report, and not the wider benefits, the wider finance opportunities, the wider contributions that are put into the programmes, and particularly on Sea Park, there's lots of contributions that you wouldn't see within that finance report. So I think part of that way they're going to look at how do we present this in a way that is much more collaborative, as you said, Councillor. So that will be a task for us to do to prepare for that session in 3 weeks' time.
Thank you. So a couple of quick comments from me and a question. There's no doubt about it. The Sea Park, it largely up until this point has been conceptual. So I think getting that Pathfinder, I'll come to you, Councillor Baggott. Thank you. Getting that Pathfinder project underway next year is important, because it starts to turn concepts into reality, and it's certainly something we need to keep a focus on. But as we've said, there are other considerations that no doubt Councillor Baggett will bring up in a second as well that we need to to factor in. When I was here last time, we were talking about, from a concept and design point of view, we'd had some sort of award. We were certainly being shortlisted. Does anyone know what the update is on that, as to where we got to? The concept was certainly seemed to be going down very well with all of the relevant town planning people and that sort of stuff. Adrian, can I come to you?
So the green and blue infrastructure study on which Sea Park is based, which was commissioned by ASELA, won the World Architecture Festival award. It's already won that award, but the World Architecture Festival doesn't take place until the end of November, which is when Urban, who wrote, and the other partners involved in writing the study will be able to present to the World Architecture Festival. So that will be an opportunity to really showcase the work going on in South Essex on a global stage.
Good, and I think that's testament to the people who've been involved in it to get that level of recognition, so that's excellent. Thank you for that, Adrian. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I get Sea Park. I think it's a good project. I'm all for it, but this isn't going to come as a surprise to anybody, and I know it certainly won't come as a surprise to Scott, because we've had these conversations. I think what we really, really need to nub down on the detail of is, when Sea Park is created, what are the financial costs to each council? How is it going to be maintained? What is the plan for the ongoing maintenance, security? There's no point having a park if the public are scared to go to it. All those sort of things really need to be nubbed down, and there needs to be a confidence for all of the participating members and participating councils that these things are being addressed. And that's where I think we need to be focusing the detail on. I'll certainly be pushing to make sure we get those answers in very, very clear and easy speak.
Absolutely, and we discussed it, and I think when we get to that Pathfinder, that pilot phase, all those questions absolutely need to be packaged in around that, because if it proves to be unwieldy and very difficult to manage in the ways that you discussed, then we've really got to think about it strategically as to how we progress it. So that's all noted. Andy, I know you popped in a couple of minutes late. I understand that's not a problem, but we were just discussing earlier on about getting together as a group anyway to look at our strategies, the environment strategy of which Sea Park sits under. We really need to get together and just regroup and say, look, what's the direction of travel on these? Are we going in the right direction? Do we have other priorities we need to be focused on in the environmental space as well? So we're going to get together and do that within the next 3 weeks. So unfortunately, I'm going to rob half a day of your time at some point soon, but it'll be a really good discussion. And comments like that are absolutely part of that discussion when we look at what the work we're doing. So thank you. Any other comments on that programme highlight report? Other than that, it all seems to be tracking. Great to be getting some recognition for ASELA for a project. Great that we're going to sort of turn the concept into an element of reality come next year. But then, as Andy says, absolutely about where do we go from there? Because we've got to make this a manageable experience for the people who would use the Sea Park. Okay, if there's nothing else on that, I'm going to move on to the 7th item on our agenda, which is South Essex Technical University. And this has got something Scott can talk on with confidence. And that's on page 17 in the agenda pack. Scott, can I turn to you for a progress update and a review of what we're looking at here, please?
Yeah, certainly, Chairman. And again, following the way that I think certainly this warrants a longer piece of time at the next joint committee to explain the direction of travel and how well the programme is going. And I think at the last joint committee, you raised, or colleagues raised around some of the risks, and I think the risks were around our own skill base in terms of, have we got the right resources, the right people to make sure, we procure and set up the operating company correctly, and how the advice we needed around getting the right HE advisor or advisors to deliver the ambitions of the, as was then the 5 businesses. I'm pleased to say that Teva Motors has now joined the board formally, so we should be getting a minimum of 60 graduates from year one. I'm almost also very pleased to say, because we had a board meeting yesterday, that 2, if not 3 or 4 of the businesses said, look, if we get the right provider and they can deliver our ambitions, they would, if not double, but treble the amount in year 2. So in year 1, it is around, it's paced because it's a lot of work to do by 2023, but clearly the ambitions and the growth opportunities around skills and the growth opportunities in South Essex are quite enormous in terms of ambition from some of those businesses. So real good confidence boost for the programme. And I want to put on record to say I'm really, some people can make a real difference. So I'm really pleased to have Ruth Kelly, who is the new head of skills at Essex County Council, on the executive group, who clearly has a wealth of experience and has started to give me much more confidence, as well as the team on there around the advice we're now currently getting around, who will be that university provider or providers for the businesses. So progress is going very well. There'll be a lot of work being done behind the scenes, mainly now with businesses. So getting their understanding, who will be their lead on this, and it's quite an exciting program. So I think we should, and we will do it the away day, give a bit more of a longer update. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Councillor Baggett.
Thank you, Chairman. I've only just arrived and I'm asking questions, sorry. Yes, Scott, it would be useful just to understand what is the process that we're going to go through for actually assessing and finding this provider, and what is the process for the coming out the other end and actually then making them the provider?
Thank you, Leader. I should apologise. I should have said Ruth Gilbert, not Ruth Kelly. I've got too many Ruths. Ruth Gilbert from Essex. Apologies, but it's a really good question. I think that's the point of there will be a soft marketing exercise which we're starting to work on at the moment, Leader, and then obviously we'll invite interest, and we think there will be significant interest. And then once we do that, that's what they're currently working up. What is the process to do that? Bear in mind it will be the businesses that make decisions, because it's a business-driven board. It won't be ASELA, but we would be a role in facilitation of that. So there will be as we're probably used to, a point scoring system, but I think it will be, and also how much of it, will be around cost, some of that, around the how will they do it in the way that the businesses want this, not how current university is set up. So it's interesting at we had a DCN session last night that Loughborough University were there and wanted to talk to us about how can Loughborough University get involved with this programme. And I said, well, Loughborough University need to look at what they want to do differently rather than us going to how Loughborough University want us to work with them. It's how they can adapt to what the businesses want. So, as I say, I think I would welcome some of the team coming along to a bigger session at Joint Committee to talk about exactly that same question, maybe before we get to Christmas, because I think we will ramp up the soft marketing sessions. Obviously, I'll share that with Councillor Bentley, and around then the involvement of members within those sessions.
Thanks. I think my point was going to be that, and I think you've covered it, is for business to buy in to the provider and having the confidence, they've got to be involved right from the get-go in the selection and how that is run out to give them that confidence to engage with. Otherwise, it just falls apart, doesn't it? And I think you've nubbed that down. Thank you. Just
add to that. I mean, it's key. Let's be clear. Those businesses we've mentioned in this programme are key to get the appetite from those university providers as well. So they are, hence why the soft marketing tests and the work we've done in those business sites. So we've already lined up the first session within Leonardo's building, not in a council building. So they're with them that we're selling the opportunity, because that's where we hope to get a better arrangement, because it's a long-term arrangement rather than the first year.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you very much, Scott. Absolutely fantastic. This is one of those projects that when we look back and say what made the difference, this will be one of them. And the one thing South Essex misses is this technical university, and it's going to happen. Could I just ask a question, just for my own clarity really? When creating a university, usually you need a university to sponsor that work. Is that necessarily the same as the provider? I don't think it is, but is it necessarily the same as the provider, just so we're all clear what that means?
It's a good question. So there's two pieces of work. So we are setting up an operating company which will be the provider. So effectively, we would the businesses will set their operating company. They will work directly with universities. I think there'll be more than one. So again, we will do. So we wouldn't effectively. This is why the challenge we need to come up with a name, because it won't be called a technical university, because effectively we won't be. The operating company, which is run by the businesses, will facilitate, will then procure various different skills providers to provide their needs. So it's a good question again, and that's why Pinsons are working on the operating company. So again, that's something that I'm sure you'll get to understand with me as we go along the journey.
Thank you. Scott, just a quick question for me, just to clarify and get it out there. In terms of programme resources, we've got a highlight of what's gone in to get it to where it's going. Is that sufficient? Have we got anything to flag? I notice around the two sort of key resources of time and money, we've flagged as Amber. Do we just want to comment on that? Are we confident that we've still got the right level of resource to get this where we need to be at the time we want to get it there?
I was less confident in the last joint committee. I'm more confident with the resources we've now procured. As I said there, we've got a number of experts that have done this before now that I have more confidence in. So I suppose the risk, and it's on the highlight report, is still we are still reliant, and again there's another financial piece of work that's being done at the moment to double check the Hatch report, which we all signed off as a business case. I'm very pleased to say that their work has said this is still for businesses viable. Bear in mind, this is for businesses viable in the long term as we set up the operating company, and it would depend on the appetite of the university providers about how much return the operating company would get. So they would get a return to effectively roll out the programme much wider than the university level. Bear in mind, this is a skills programme, and this was the lead of it. The risk at the moment is the setup still to pay for these resources to get us to 2023. And although we have got assurances and I have been personally with Martin Whiteley on our programme, we, as the Chief Executive of the Freeport Board, we are still reliant at the moment for Freeport funding, which, as you know, in the current climate, there have been some delays. However, what the 151s are now doing is so we're starting to work at if that money is longer it takes longer to be received, because I'm sure we will get that funding. Where would we get resources to keep the programme on track with September 23? So it is a live risk, Chairman, and it's one that we're working up, and I'm sure that we'll have hopefully not a need for a plan B, but another plan to make sure we have enough resources until such time as we get that Freeport funding.
That's an interesting point. I think talking about getting together, as we will in 3 weeks' time, and I know I'll go back to it, but that's absolutely, I think, something we collectively can look at as local authorities, because we're all putting money in different directions to support the economic agenda, the growth agenda, the skills agenda. And if there's any risk around that, maybe we just need to have a conversation amongst ourselves as local authorities saying, actually, do we need to put a bit of a financial insurance policy in place to make sure that we don't end up in a risk that we can't deliver? Because this feels really imminent. It feels really positive. I have to make the point and now thank not just the fact the work that you've done, but the business partners that are involved in this. Great news that Tev are coming on board as well. But we can't afford to falter. And if there is a risk, as we'll put in, it's not significant, you've marked it as amber, but we need to collectively come together and say, how do we back that up financially if needs be? And we need to probably look at how we're spending our cash as local authorities, because if we all see this as a really good thing for South Essex, that all of our individual local authority areas and our residents and young people can benefit from, then we just need to make sure that we're in a strong enough position to get that delivered and get it over the line. Did you want to come back?
Just one point, and that's a really excellent point. And one of the 2 points you made earlier are really important. One, how do we bring all the economic development managers across South Essex into this programme rather than relying on one or two? And if you think about all those are working on the UK Share of Prosperity funding money. What a great opportunity. Skills is a theme there. What a great opportunity actually to align that funding across South Essex to this programme.
And I certainly think that is something we'll develop the conversation when we look at this programme again in a few weeks' time. Any other comments on this? Kevin, sorry.
Well, I just had a thought from what Scott said. Our devolution conversation around getting powers from Westminster into, whether it's a combined authority, whatever it may be, if skills is one of the big asks, we get control of the funding and the ability to run skills with educationists and companies, it makes a big difference. No more than does Whitehall dictate to us on education policy, we'll do it ourselves. This takes a giant leap forward once that happens.
Very good point. Okay, any more on this? Still feels really good. That feels like, we're identifying some of the potential issues, but we're really talking through a plan around that already as we sit here. So that's really positive. Okay, good. I'll move on, in which case then, from that. Thank you, Scott, for that report and the update. Next update report is our digital programme, which is found on page 23 of our agendas. So bear with me 2 seconds while I just get to page 23. Sharon again's not here. Jonathan, I'm seeing your name appear on here, so I'm going to pick on you for a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At our last joint committee, we picked up that it would be good to bring along a summary report of the work we've undertaken since 2020, receiving the 6.9 million funding from DCMS. So in front of you, you've got actually 2 reports, item 8 and item 9. If it's okay, Chair, I'd like to take them together because I think they complement each other. One is obviously the detailed of what we've done to date in the last quarter, and the other one is overall for the last 2 years. So the report itself on page 27, item 9, if I could actually take that first, just to remind us of what we agreed from the outset of the 4 areas and key themes, looking at full fibre coverage for 2025, expanding mobile coverage across South Essex, improving public service, and opening up access for all. So the report you've got in front of you, and I'll hand over to our project manager in a minute to provide a bit more detail, is focused on, we looked at the macro level of the 6.9 million coming into South Essex, but actually what does it mean to local residents and local businesses in your own areas, districts and boroughs? So there's a lot more information that is in this report that gives you that oversight. In particular, we've seen that 6.9 million translate into nearly 100 million of private sector investment that would have been not achievable without that funding from DCMS. So that's an amazing conversion. But again, the report picks up and goes into more detail around where it's making the difference, where we need to work a bit harder, and what areas there is still areas of not spots and coverage, because that's our ideal goal, to get to there where everybody's got full coverage. But obviously we're not there yet. So if I can, a big thank you to the digital team. It's not finished the programme so far. There's an awful lot of work to do. One element of the programme is the 200 kilometres of cable being laid and being lit very soon. But there's also a number of other areas that are highlighted in the report, agenda item 9. But yeah, if I can hand over to Michael Snaith to give you an overview of the report and where we are to date with the programme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so you say you were blending item 9 and 10 together there. Are we going to turn to somebody else or take some questions on the highlight report first?
8 and 9, if it's okay, Chair. And if Michael Snaith can just give an overview of paper agenda item 9. Okay, so shall we just... We've had a bit of an update there on the programme highlight report. Has anyone got any specific comments on that before I go to Michael? Good to see you, Michael, actually, again.
Good morning, good to meet you as well.
Any specific comments on the programme highlight report before we turn to Michael for a more the briefing update? No? Good. Michael, over to you, sir.
Oh, good morning, thank you, Chair, and good morning to all of you. Before I just go into the report, I would like to just place on record and extend my thanks to all your colleagues who have supported this project over the last 3 years. It has been about collaboration and partnership across all the local authorities, and we would not be where we are today without that real clear sense of collaboration and partnership, which I think goes back to some of the introductory remarks today, if I may say, around how we as local authorities can work together and what we can realise in a very powerful way. So I do wish to place on record from both myself and my colleagues who are working with this on a daily basis, our thanks to all of you. In terms of the report, I just really want to highlight, you've seen the report, but I just want to just really highlight some key areas which I trust will be of interest to you. And this is very much focused on outcomes. It's all very well saying we've got the fibre. It's all very well saying we're going to do digital. It's about what impact that digital connectivity makes on people's lives and also how it supports businesses. And yes, we have been incredibly fortunate in securing over almost £7.5 million to deliver 200 kilometres of fibre, which now links over 200 public sector buildings across South Essex. And that's a terrific step forward. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment about what we've achieved there. But it's not just about that fibre being there. It's now what we do working with our partners to drive outcomes for those communities and for those businesses. And in that respect, I wanted sort of just to give you a snapshot about where we were last year and where we are today. As a nation, we have a commitment to look at gigabit connectivity by 2025, i.e. access to gigabit connectivity. That could and that's at 85%. Our vision is full fibre, and our vision is still that we want to see as many people as possible, residents and businesses, have access to full fibre by 2025. And that story is encouraging. If I just give you one or two quick examples, if we look at Rochford, for example, in July 2021, the level of full fibre to people's homes and to businesses in Rochford was 8%. It is now, and this again is from figures in August of this year, it's now 33%. And that is about promoting South Essex as a place for investment, to attract investment from a significant number of fibre carriers. And that's a good news story. And I will say at this point, it's not just about ourselves and ASELA. We are incredibly fortunate to work very closely with our good colleagues at Essex County Council and Digital Essex. And we work very closely with them. Again, that's through collaboration, engaging with the market and promoting investment. And another example in that is actually, if I may say, is Thurrock. Thurrock was 13.6%. It is now 48%. So again, significant increases. I will, however, acknowledge, and I think it's only right that we have to look at the other side, Castle Point is still at 4.5%. And that is not good enough, and we are going to do something about it. And I'm not just saying that in a sort of in a presumptive way. Yes, 50% of Castle Point does have access to gigabit connectivity through the Virgin Media network. But we want to ensure that Castle Point also now sees this further investment in full fibre. And I'm very happy to take questions on that in explaining what we're trying to do. So that's the improvements. In terms of what we're now doing, I just want to quickly touch on some of the key areas. I've touched on the fact we have this 200 kilometres of fibre into public sector buildings. Thurrock as a council has already derived benefit from that. They have now lit that network and they have derived over £1 million worth of savings over the next 4 years. We are now at a point where all the other sites will be enabled with not only the full fibre but a lit service within the next 12 months. And we are currently investing further money to create that platform to enable those sites. So those sites in Basildon and Castle Point and Rochford and Brentwood, which are part of that network, will be seeing that benefit going forward. And we're working very closely with your digital teams in each of those local authorities to achieve that goal. Another area that I would like to touch on is the fact that we have been, and it should be hopefully signed next week, we have been successful in securing £900,000 of investment from Highways England to support our digital aspirations. And that is aligned to two particular projects. One is about linking Brentwood, which already has that fibre connection, but it's not part of the wider connection into South Essex. But secondly, we also have secured funding to deliver a LoRaWAN network, which is actually a network which I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment. And that is not about technology, it's about driving outcomes. A further area that we're currently exploring, and we are hoping this may happen, again, is coming back to funding. There is an opportunity still for us to secure some additional money from CELEP to take forward some further fibre digital aspirations, and that's something which is ongoing, but we're very mindful it's something which needs to be addressed very soon because the CELEP board actually needs to have that to confirmation by tomorrow. So in that respect, we have moved forward with that fibre. We've got a plan in place to take forward that fibre connectivity. We have this additional funding. But it's about what we then do with that fibre. And if I just could if you could bear with me, I'll just give you one or two examples of what we're doing. Within that network, it's like a motorway. We've created slip roads, breakout points. And those breakout points are strategically located around that network. So from Purfleet in the west to Rochford in the east, we've now got this contiguous network. And there are all these slip roads. Those slip roads enable companies to utilise that fibre to break out into business parks, into new residential areas. And I can say with great confidence that we already are, by promoting this network and engaging with the market, we're already seeing some very good examples of where investment is now potentially going to be taken forward over the next 6 months in supporting better connectivity into business parks in the likes of Basildon, and areas of Thurrock, and also in areas of Rochford as well. That conversation is still ongoing, but I think you'll see there, again, it's about how we're now leveraging that really important investment to benefit both businesses and communities. A second area which I'd like to sort of touch on is around sheltered housing. This is not just a Thurrock project, this is an ASELA project. what we have there is that there is connectivity into all the shelter homes within Thurrock. We're working with our colleagues in adult social care who are supporting those particular sites, where we want to use that fibre to create virtual opportunities to actually start delivering lessons and active engagement with residents. So we are working with one of the local colleges in Thurrock. So we're looking at how we can have collectively yoga sessions across 29 sites. It could be around digital skills. It could actually be around different subjects that actually residents want to be engaged in. That is about sharing that information. It's about how we can extend that then to sheltered accommodation within other parts of the ASELA area. And a further sort of example is village halls and community centres. As part of the funding that we secured, we've already enabled with fibre over 25 community sites and village halls. What we are keen to do is work with each of the local authorities and other community groups. How can we drive those sites as hubs, digital hubs, particularly with regards to addressing digital skills, digital inclusion, but also how could they also be places for work as workplaces for people who perhaps are working from home who need somewhere else to work within their communities. And the final one, which I want to sort of touch on today, is the Internet of Things and this LoRaWAN network, which may be something which is just words to you. But can I just go back to one or two points made earlier about how digital can link across many different facets of what you are trying to achieve here in South Essex. We've talked around, and I note here, about the environment, about waste, about carbon reduction. Well, this network is about collecting data, anonymised data. It's about how we can collect data to inform policy, how this network can inform our strategies going forward. And this is something which is not just conceptual. It is something which has already been evident in a number of local authorities throughout the UK, and we've secured this investment. We are looking to invest in a South Essex-wide LoRaWAN network, which will be delivered by March 2024, and that will then result in actually a network which can support our outcomes. It's not just a technology-based solution, and so we're already starting to engage with each of the local authorities to understand what outcomes you're looking at, what projects you're already looking at, where access to data and how data can inform you can really drive some of those opportunities. And at some stage, I'd be delighted to come back and share some more detail about that when time permits. The other element about this LoRaWAN network, it's about how it can also support two other key areas. One is actually how it supports local businesses. We want to ensure this is an open network. So if a local company has an innovation, has a solution that they want to trial, they can use that network. So it's again about how we can actually stimulate that growth and stimulate innovation locally. And the other one goes back to actually the university. It's about data. And that data is about how we can share that data with schools, with colleges, how we can actually look at coding, how we can actually get young people engaged. So I hope that's been of help to you this morning, giving you that overview. It's about outcomes. Any questions? Thank you.
Michael, thank you, because as ever, your passion shines through, and I think the passion and energy you brought to this is why we're in, as you say, you rightly point out how you've worked, and we do this together as a team, but I'd like to thank you because your passion, enthusiasm, energy you bring to it has certainly made this one of our most successful programmes and demonstrating what we can do in ASELA. So my thanks to you. I've got questions, but I'd rather defer if anyone else has got any first. If not, I'll pop in with a question. But is anyone? Simon, brilliant, thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. Michael, your passion comes through with passion. Look, the number of name checks for Rochford as leader of Rochford District Council, I was delighted with the name checks and the fact that the impressive statistics to begin with. And also I take great pride in when I drive past or see people referring to ASELA Digital, because I think that branding is very important. But I'm just a little confused, and I hope you can clear up that confusion, because I was at a presentation of City Fibre a few weeks back where they were talking about development on the east side of Rochford, and they appear to be taking over the whole of an area, a geographical area. And what I can't quite get my head round, so it's a bit of clarification on detail, is with the gas service, for example, Transco operate the network of pipes. You've given a point about motorways and side roads. But what I don't quite understand, and it may come back to the Castle point, is Virgin seem to control their network, but it's the commonality of the network that I don't quite understand. So this rollout, to public halls, public bodies, very, very impressive. But wouldn't that be happening with other companies in any case when they roll out their own, city fibre, for example, if they're networking a whole geographical area? What is the additionality that ASELA Digital is bringing to it?
Thank you for that question. It's an important point in respect to what we're doing, but also it's about what the private sector is doing. I think there's two elements to this. It's about the fact that the likes of C5 are investing. They've invested in Southend. They're extending that into the likes of Rochford, and they will build their own network. They build their own network. So that's the City Fibre. Virgin Media, now Virgin Media O2, have their own cable network. They have already made a commitment. They're going to upgrade that going forward to full fibre by 2028. And there's already work starting in parts of the UK where they're upgrading that from their cable to full fibre over the next 2 to 3 years. Now, they use their own network. Going forward, it's much more likely they'll use something called the open reach passive infrastructure, i.e. the open reach ducting, which is already in place. And so that will actually speed up investment. And then where do we come into this? Well, the fibre that we have invested in is deployed through open reaches ducting. The fibre is what I've referred to this. It's an open access network, so we can get different companies saying, look, this won't be the open reaches and the Virgin Medias, but there will be smaller companies who are looking at South Essex and saying, we want to go to X area. The cost of getting there to build our own network to get there is too prohibitive. But if we can actually piggyback on another network to get to that area, it opens up opportunities. So if I take the Basildon one as an example, that company, would they look at Basildon yes, they may, but it's accelerating their investment because they can piggyback on the fibre that we've invested in to actually encourage that investment. So I hope that's of some help.
Any other questions? Okay, just a quick one from me, Michael. The tables that show the full fibre coverage. I just want to clarify. I'm going to ask some stupid questions here, but sometimes they never hurt. Full fibre coverage to me is that about full fibre to premises?
Yes.
And is it talking about the capability? The coverage is. I mean, I might have the ability to bring full fibre to my premises, but I've got to physically sign a contract to make it happen. So it's basically the provision of it, not necessarily how many people have availed themselves of it. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct, Chair. And I think that does raise one area which I didn't touch on, but I will touch on if I may very briefly, is inclusion. Yeah. And in the current economic climate, the take-up of full fibre connectivity is quite low. And that is, I think, is actually a big challenge for all the fibre carriers at this present moment. Some of the work that we're doing, working very closely with Digital Essex, is actually how we can try to actually make that more accessible. And that makes it more affordable. And I think it may be, just as a reference here, there was a report only yesterday that all the fibre carriers and a lot of the internet providers now have made available social tariffs, many of which are based on full fibre. But there's only been a 10% take-up on that opportunity. So therefore, do we have a role in that, in promoting that? Not on behalf of any company, but the wider opportunity. And I know Digital Essex are doing some good work in that area. But there is a challenge at the present moment. Yes, that full fibre may be available to someone in their home, but whether it's actually affordable at this stage is still a big challenge.
I think that is the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so therefore, is there any way we can get separate data? So if we say, by the way, when it says Essex, we're talking Essex as, I'm looking at table 2.1, it says Essex as a whole, at August 22, with 36.5% covered in terms of people that could tap into full fibre.
Yes.
That's Essex as a whole, is it?
That is the county of Essex, okay. Yes, indeed. Yes.
So is there then data that says, maybe coming into more specific areas, so Brentwood actually has got really good availability of full fibre at 55%.
Yes.
But it'd be interesting to see some data about what's the percentage of people have actually taken it. Can we get that, or is that more difficult?
Yeah, I regret to say, in general, that is commercially confidential to the to both the fibre carriers, but also in particular the internet providers. Okay. I would say, however, that this is, I think, part of the conversation that we continue to have with the market, is to understand what that level of take-up is. Because it is a challenge at the present moment. Yes, it is commercially confidential, but it actually helps us understand what the investment is, but more importantly, what the response is. And I think it's how we target that. And I give you an example. In London, for example, where there are a significant number of social housing portfolios, they're becoming more willing to share that. How can you target some areas around sort of social housing, council housing? And actually, that's something which I think we could look at quite seriously within South Essex.
I think we need to look at it, because if I use an analogy, it's like buying a fantastic motor car for 40 grand and never, and not knowing how often you drive the thing.
Absolutely.
So what we've done is we've invested significant amount of money into infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And yes, I understand the commercial confidentiality, but it really would be helpful to know to what extent what we've invested in is being utilised. And so somehow I think we need to have that conversation. Is there a way of, I get it's commercially sensitive and I don't want to give away the sales figures and it's a competitive market and all of that, but somehow if we can get an angle on the utilisation of the investment that's been made, I think that's significant, because everything we do, we keep coming back to it. Everything we talk about in this chamber was about for the benefit of our residents and businesses. But we don't actually know how many residents are benefiting. No, we know how many could potentially as a percentage, but we don't know how many are, and there's a difference. And I think that's a challenge for us, and I think we should really try and get to the bottom of that. It's just something that occurs to me as I look at the numbers. So I don't know how we do that, Michael, but it's certainly, we're all in the business of knowing to what extent we're benefiting our residents and businesses. Kevin?
So, a very important conversation we're having here. I don't want to lose sight in all of this of the importance of 5G. This is how we are going to move transport around in the future, how we're going to do a lot of our communications in the future. So while it's a very good idea, it comes with some thought-provoking ideas around where the masts go. And I think as South Essex as a whole, we need to have that conversation and be clear with the public where they can go, why we need them, what the 5G network is going to carry. So still it's sporadic. Sometimes you can go from 5G to 3G in the space of 100 yards down the road at the moment. But it is coming, and it's how we're going to run transportation in the future with guided buses, all that sort of thing. That are not here yet, but they're coming. And I think we should have that note in our head. We've got to start planning for that as part of this, which is also hugely important. That 5G network becomes critically important in the next 20 to 30 years.
Totally agree, Kevin. And it goes back to the point we made earlier in the meeting. When we come together next month to talk about the strategic themes, there's different projects within that. This is a successful project around fibre, but actually under digital connectivity as a strategic theme, then we need to start looking at other things as well. And, that's why I envisage under these headings of, the different strategy programs we've got, there could be multiple projects under that. And I agree with you, 5G at some point, and maybe Michael in, but that's certainly another project we'd love to start seeing updates on and seeing how we maximise the use of that technology as well. Michael, did you want to come back?
Yes, if I may just come back, Chair, I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Bentley around 5G, and I wouldn't want you to feel leaving today that we're not looking at mobile coverage of 5G, but certainly the fibre network, I come back to the point, for 5G to work effectively, it needs that fibre connectivity. So again, coming back to leveraging that fibre network actually could really support that 5G aspiration. I think another really important point is around the fact it's about engaging the mobile operators, and I know that's something that collectively, both within Essex and ASELA, we're doing, and certainly there is already investment in 5G, in not only in South Essex, but Essex in general. There are issues around 5G in respect to planning, and I know again that we as ASELA, we're given the opportunity to work very closely with our good colleagues at Essex with regards to their planning documentation around mobile and mobile installations. But it's an area which undoubtedly will become even more important in the future. And I would wholeheartedly agree with what you've outlined. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Chairman. Someone said that there's no stupid questions, just stupid people, so I'm happy to pop myself into that little box right now. What, if any, there's been a significant investment in this, as the Chairman said, what, if any, are the commercial opportunities for ASELA with this project?
And again, you may, if I refer to the actual sort of report in there, there's reference to the fact that we are in the process of securing an MOU with the delivery partner, where we will generate a revenue from the use of that fibre beyond the use of it by the public sector. We actually have a 15 IRU on that network, so we don't actually pay for the fibre for 15 years. So again, we've already got that in place. But in terms of the future, we are looking to derive an ongoing revenue. What we're then looking to do is reinvest that revenue in further digital-related projects and digital-related initiatives. And what we're looking to do is actually the private company matches that with their investment as well. So I hope that's reassuring, but I think that comes back to that 5G. Part of the future could be about how we invest that money, subject to approval. Actually, how do we invest that money to actually enable that 5G to go forward? But that's for the future. But I hope you find that reassuring.
Thank you, Andy. Mike, just quickly on that MOU, it talks in the report about that project. The MOU will be completed during this autumn. Are we still on track to do that, as we sort of feel like they're in the thick of autumn, especially this morning?
Indeed, absolutely. It is still our intention. And I will make the commitment. It will be completed by the autumn of this year. There has been a delay because the delivery partner, which was a very key part of delivering this particular network, Next Generation Access, was acquired by another company in September of this year, and we are waiting to have conversations through Next Generation Access with the company concerned, which is ITS. It's in the public domain, and those conversations are taking place in early November. Okay.
Good. We look forward to that. Any more for Scott?
Just one point, Chairman, really, to say, again, Mike, well done for all the work, but also we need to work harder with Adrian in terms of how we're selling this massive success. The point that the Councillor Baggott raised well there, that the financial benefits of return, the benefits of this programme, comes back to that financial report. We need to really rethink about how we sell the ASELA story in the programmes, because it isn't a finance spreadsheet. So something we need to pick up as the away day about the wider benefits that we can tell to our residents and businesses for the future, rather than it cost us X and we received Y. So we need to work on, Mike, with you.
I totally agree. It's certainly an exciting, progressive programme that's opened up a lot of opportunity for people if they can tap into it, if they can afford to tap into it. That's maybe something we just need to pursue, as we've said. But certainly about talking about this, Scott, if the range of provision is there, we want to, by promoting it and communicating it, we need to do it as much as possible. Having said that, and we'll maybe talk about this in comms later, but certainly overlaps into this conversation. You've got these big for-profit organisations, B-Fibre, Openreach, etc. They're obviously promoting the fact that, for the piggybacking arrangements that you talked about, Michael, that they are out there in the marketplace. They're advertising. And maybe there's a bit of a joined-up conversation with them that, as a narrative that says, actually, we're only in the market being able to offer this service to you, Mrs. Jones, because actually of the infrastructure investment that's gone in. So we need to join up our marketing of what ASELA's achieving with what some of these fibre providers are achieving, because they've got far more sophisticated, no disrespect to anyone, but far more resources and sophistication around communication. That's what they do. They're marketing machines. But I think we want some acknowledgement for that in terms of what they do potentially. I'm just thinking out loud, but I certainly think there's scope for us to share the story through their comms as well as through our own comms. Okay, any more for any more? No? Good, thank you. Excellent update. Thank you, Michael, very much indeed. So that takes us through items 8 and 9 together. So the next item on the agenda actually segues into that, doesn't it? We were just talking about communications. So Adrian, can I turn to you and have a general discussion about how we're using the megaphone for what ASELA's doing?
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out what we've done since the last committee meeting. Though I would have to say that I guess some of the outcomes that we've had since that period have been postponed or delayed for a number of reasons, which you'll understand. So to pick up the point around the digital programme, for example, then we've been pushing to get, as Michael has explained, a couple of key milestones over the finishing line, which are still imminent. So we have already lined up communications jointly with Highways England, for example, around the funding that they've done, and you'll know they've also kindly offered to do some work with yourself to help us promote that further through some video work. So that's an opportunity that is still in the offing, which I would have hoped when I reported to the last committee we might have already done. And similarly with the Memorandum of Understanding, another very big opportunity for us to make some good noise around the success of the digital programme, which again I'll work with Michael, and I've already lined up some work with the provider around this to go as soon as we can on that. So there are a number of good communications opportunities. We mentioned earlier the C Part 1 around the World Architecture Festival at the end of November, and the technical university project. Again, there are a number of opportunities that will come on stream there. There's engagement work to be done with the wider business community, with the SME community around building a business supporter group for the whole concept of what the technical university is and what it's achieving. And we've begun work to try and socialise that and to encourage interest around the SME community around South Essex, and that will pick up over the coming weeks and months. I'll pause there. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take those. Just one other point. Obviously, you've talked a lot about the stock take, if you like, of the programmes. So very much part of that, the conversation, I think, is, how do we maximise the communication opportunities around each of these programmes? And with the leader sponsors for each of those programmes, how do we use you as spokespeople and take the opportunity of you now stepping up to take the lead of some of those programmes? I think there are good communication opportunities in there to talk to you about that when you feel ready to do that.
Thank you. Totally agree with that. And I think there's an opportunity, again, I just touched on it, but there's an opportunity for ASELA's communications piece to be shared and networked in with other communicators. So Essex County Council, for example, as an organisation, with a huge comms team, and a lot of huge, big stories going out there that absolutely synergise with what we're talking about. And so I think we need to look at how we maximise our comms reach as ASELA by doing joint maybe communications with other organisations. So whether they're private sector companies around the digital piece, whether they're other companies, Scott, around the technical uni piece, other things we're doing around investment zones, etc., etc. I think, I do think there's a place to be had here for video. I'm quite into doing 1 minute, 2 minute snapshots if we can. I say I'm into it. I believe in it. I'm not doing enough of it myself, but I think we could do that. And certainly with these ambassadorial roles for the programmes, with Kevin on skills, for instance, and economic growth, I certainly think we need to talk about taking that to another level. All right. And the reason I say that as well is, it's obvious, but I also look at some of the numbers. We've got to put a bit more into our website, because it worries me to see the user numbers down a bit on that. I'll come to you, Andy, as well. So I think we need to it's that taking stock, that session we'll have in a few weeks' time, and comms will be part of that, how we just take it up a level. I think we've really come on well. It's good to see growth in social media, but we're still pretty small. I'll just make a comment on that as well. If we think about, I just thought about it as I was looking at the number of LinkedIn users, 394 followers. We represent, I don't know, maybe there's 7 local authorities and other organisations in this room. We probably employ, I don't know, Kevin, how many people do Essex County Council employ roughly?
Quite a few.
Okay, so we employ thousands of people in this room. And I think, and I notice in our staff, Jonathan, particularly across the Rochford-Brentwood partnership, we're all very much mentioning ASELA in terms of what we do. Even if every member of staff or 50% of members of staff in Brentwood and Rochford following this, that number on LinkedIn would go significantly upwards. So how can we drive that? Not just because we want the staff to be in a bubble, but the staff that work in our organisations all live in Essex, many of them in South Essex. So they're people that live and work and talk in the place. So Can we just think about how we promote that in our own organisations? It's grown, which is good, and it's growing, which is good, but it's still small. And given the scope of some of the programmes and the significance of them, it should be a much broader reach. So that's just something to throw in the mix. I had Kevin, and then I had Andrew.
Thank you. So a lot to unpack there. I would start on the premise that communications is singly the most important thing we do, because you can make the best widget in the world. If you can't sell it, it's a pointless widget. So, and sometimes comms gets forgotten about, as we'll talk about that at the end. Actually, it should always be up at the front, in my opinion. So first thing we want to talk about and what the plans are. I think, so all that's correct. On the video piece, certainly in Essex, cabinet members regularly will do video vignettes that will go out, short 30-second bursts, just saying what's happening, get it out there, get shared across the piece. You're quite right to we should always remember as politicians that our staff are Essex residents too, whether it be Basildon or wherever, but in the county of Essex, and therefore they have a view, and their view is important in all of this. What I would say is part of the away day, the agenda is getting bigger, is I think we should just have a little piece around communications. This is the moment now, once we agree, to start defining South Essex as a place. I think start talking about the projects we're talking about. So if we have the university, it's not the university just for a place it's built in, it's for South Essex. I think that becomes hugely important, and that's we can start mapping out, and I'm going to have that replica conversation in North Essex next week, start mapping out what this area is and carving out what it is and identifying it. Largely that's around communications. And of course the golden rule of marketing, you have to say it 8 times for the people hear it once, so you keep repeating the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. Maybe in a slightly different way, but the same thing. And if I says a lot of people in this room snap, crackle and pop, you'd say Rice Krispies. They haven't used that for a long time as a television advertisement, but you know about it because they kept repeating it. And it's the same thing here.
Totally agree. We'll have to think of our 3-word, whatever it is. Yeah, I'll work on that. I'm not going to do it off the cuff. I'll get it wrong right now. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm glad you said what you've said, and I'm glad that Kevin said what he said, because I can ameliorate what I'm going to say now, because I was going to be incredibly disparaging to an extent, which I apologise to those people that I'm now going to disparage. But when you look at what we've been talking about today, we've been talking about some really important stuff. You know, we've been talking about education, future provision for people that desperately need it, providing the right education for employers that have been saying for years upon years that they don't get the right people coming to them and allowing employment, which is crucial to economic growth. Economic growth is absolutely the fundamental watchword that we need to be focused on if we're going to talk about Essex thriving in general. We've spoken about, with great passion, and I thank Michael for his passion on that, a lot of other people have said it, about what the benefits are to actually really getting the IT and the provision done and doing it rightly. All really, really big ticket items. And yet, you know, for the people that are watching it, if there's anybody out watching this, you know, you'd think we were talking about the chemical composition of paint. You know, it's been as dull as dishwater, except for Michael, with regard to how we go about it. The way we communicate is dull as dishwater. Where's our YouTube channel? Why haven't we got a YouTube presence? Why haven't we got TikTok? I know people might say TikTok's only for the younger generation, but I'm reassured by my comms team, which we've got some youth in it, that actually TikTok could be really, really powerful for getting key messages across. We've been utilising video for our cabinet members at Basildon. We are trying to be as progressive as we can in communicating, putting a human element to it, but putting a real element and passion into what we do. And as Kevin said, communication should be at the forefront. And I just feel that our communication isn't currently with it. It's not currently hitting the button, and we really need to sort of make it far more relevant, far more exciting, and actually really get a flavour for what we're about within this organisation.
Yeah, as I say, I think there's definitely an opportunity to raise the bar. What I would say about that is we all, you know, if we're going to do video, for example, and make it a bit different, use YouTube or whatever we might do, we're all going to have to be kind of willing to be ambassadors for our programs and be able to do that. And I think Adrian has taken us forward. There's no question about that. But actually, it's about pushing. Adrian's very good at coming up with things that we've got here, report and the stuff, thankfully, we've got in the pipeline that will create as a little headline, whether it's at the end of November for the award and we need to do something with the fibre that we've talked about. But we also need to push Adrian rather than Adrian trying to pull stuff out of us the whole time. So let's just make it a two-way street, because I think if we know if there's something good happening in Basildon And I did this. I did this with the showcase in Brentwood. I'll always try and feed in an ASELA theme to it. I don't know if we came back to talk about the Brentwood Business Showcase and saying that's part of a Brentwood Business Showcase, but actually it took place in South Essex and attracted people from across South Essex. So we've got to seek opportunities that say if it's good for Basildon and Brentwood, do we go back to Adrian and say actually this is good for South Essex as well? So we're feeding Adrian's machine as well as Adrian coming up with things that he can share with us like he's done today. So I think I agree with you, but we all need to do this together. And so it's incumbent on all of us, I think, to do that. And that is a challenge, definitely. But I do hear what you say, and I think there's an opportunity to take this up. And Kevin's right, when we get together in a few weeks' time, we just need to focus on this. Because we have got exciting things to talk about. And we are doing impactful things, but are we delivering the message in an impactful way? And that's what you refer to, Andy. And I think we've got room to do better and do differently. Scott?
Yeah, just on the theme that I started off when we said the purpose of the review, is to use a football analogy. I think ASELA has now got promoted to the Premier League. We now need to embed it in the Premier League. We now need to put the right resources. We have 7 comms teams, not just Adrian.
Yeah.
So how do we embed Adrian's work within the 7 comms teams who are very well qualified, and we've got an excellent team in Basildon, but actually do they really work very closely with us and Adrian? No. So that's the purpose of the review. So it's a great opportunity to then take this to the next level.
And actually, the review will be 3 weeks away, and we'll have a review, and we'll do something after that. Could be 5 weeks away. So let me suggest this as an action, Adrian. I know you do liaise with our comms officers, and Leona in Brentwood, who's ex-Basildon, talks highly of you. So there's a network there already. Why don't you just pull everyone together? Because I do think that we need to feed the machine. Positive stuff that's happening in Southend is happening in South Essex. To get together with these comms colleagues, I don't know to what extent you're able to do that or the extent of the relationship. Don't wait for 3 weeks. Get together and talk about some of the exciting stuff that's happening in South Essex, Southend, Basildon, Castle Point, whatever, and see if we can package it up as being beneficial to the district, the local authority, as well as South Essex as a whole. Can you just maybe pull that meeting together? We'd certainly, I think, all back you in doing that. Kevin?
So I keep interrupting now, but I keep having these thoughts. So we had a conversation, didn't we, earlier about shared services and how we can work closer together to actually look at how we operate in the future. Here's another one. Classic example, isn't it? 7 different comms teams. Do we need 7 different comms teams, or do we need one that promotes South Essex?
It's a good question, and that's certainly a whiteboard session. But I think in the meantime, just if there's stories floating around that perhaps the comms officer in one district hasn't thought on, let's ASELAise this a little bit as well. You happy to do that, Adrian? I mean, are members and chiefs happy that maybe Adrian just has a little pull together and a regroup around some of the stories that are going around in South Essex at this point in time? Is that okay? All right, Adrian, can we leave you to maybe pull that together? I think it'd be a nice move actually to have a South Essex conflab. Scott.
I just think, I'll pick it more up on AOB, Chairman, but I think it's a great opportunity for Adrian following the away day when we've got a clear, galvanised message for Adrian to lead that piece of work. Then he'll be at that away day. We'll have a comms item on there anyway at the early stage. Now, I put it down the list, but I moved up the list, Kevin. But we'll have comms there about then actually we come out fighting, well, this is what ASELA's about, the evolution of ASELA, and then actually Adrian can then take that with all the comms getting together. Okay, how do we then work together on this? So that's a really good challenge, and we'll pick that up. And I'm more than happy for what I'd say now is that to pass over the video responsibilities of the university to Kevin. I don't want to do any more because I get a lot of thumbs down on LinkedIn on the university. So,
Andrew.
Sorry, Chair, just a thought, and I've been toying with this with regard to how we actually run the membership of this particular organisation anyway, because I do think sometimes with the discussions there is a really good case for having the relevant cabinet member that's sitting there as well, so they can hear right from the horse's mouth what's going on. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to turn this into the United Nations, but why don't we have our comms teams at the back so that they're all listening, so that they're all then actually part of the exercise, part of the conversation, and able to then brainstorm and get their ideas out there right hot off the press when we have these meetings. I mean, why aren't they invited, for instance?
Well, I would hope they're all sitting there now watching this live and taking notes. We'll have to find out when we go back, won't we? That's why they're not here. It's the only reason they can't possibly hear, because they're just rain was out. I thought I'd just watch it live today. Well, I see your point. Yeah, we live in hope. Okay, but absolutely, it's still a good conversation, and we can. This is the good thing about this. We're all seeing opportunities to take it to the next level. So that's really powerful. And the thing I'm super excited about the most in that conversation is waiting for your TikTok video, Andy. I'm really looking forward to that. Good. Okay, any more on comms? Adrian, anything else you wanted to add? You're all right with that? It's all positive feedback, and it's about developing and taking it to the next level. I'll give you a hug outside so you don't feel any hard done by from Councillor Baggett. But no, that's good. And I would like to thank... We're certainly taking this forward, but please take back to our organisations how we can expand our own network of thousands of people that live in South Essex to get on board with this. Somehow we'll do that. Right, okay. So we're happy with that. Thank you for that update. Brings us towards the end of the meeting. Any other business wasn't showing on the agenda, but I am going to go to a couple of points of any other business and then see if anybody else has got anything they want to add as well. Jonathan, we did agree today, and thanks to Michael, we agreed when we get together we'll have a focused update on some of the key programmes and projects we'll go in, and Michael did us proud on the digital piece. But because of that, we created a bit of space for that to happen, but didn't really talk about housing specifically. And maybe we'll look at that as a focus piece when we get back together next time. But did you want to contribute a few words about exactly where we are with that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I can give a quick update. And obviously, in the financial report was one of the key updates of the funding that's been drawn down from Homes England. And that is significant because that is the start of the partnership. It's the first funding we've got directly from through the government department. That's the first time they've given a direct award of funding to a council, obviously through to Southend, but as part of ASELA. And that's quite a fundamental change for Homes England. So the partnership is definitely growing. On top of that, they're now negotiating on a £120,000 fund as well that will come in and support the housing and infrastructure programme as well. So again, and that should be, that's very near. We just need to finalise the contract on that. They've also offered extensive support on 5 of the 23 stalled housing programme sites, which means a real detailed review on those sites right the way through to sort of viability, funding, grants, and they've put key resources on that. So those sites they're looking at the moment. With the funding means we can now appoint a programme director to support this programme, which was key as well. Like anything, we've been waiting for the funding, and the funding starts, and if we don't use the funding, we don't get the funding. So at the moment, I'm putting some interim resource in for the programme director while we go out to market, because we don't want to lose the resource that has been offered to us. So there will be an interim period until we go out to the market, and we might find someone, hopefully, from either our organisations or some of the housing associations within South Essex that may. Again, always a difficult one, because we're probably stealing resource from each other or from housing associations, but we want to give the opportunity for local resources within our councils and housing associations to have the opportunity with regard to that role. On top of that, we've also delivered now a number of sessions with housing associations who've now taken the lead, and Paul Edwards of CHP, Chelmsford Housing, is now chairing a group of housing associations and local authorities around accelerating housing programme with housing associations. So all the local housing associations signed up. The significant thing about that, they see the benefit. They're actually looking to invest themselves in the ASELA housing programme. They see the benefits, so that's fantastic, rather than just looking to us. They want to, and they might put that offer forward. So it's a small amount of funding at the moment, but actually a significant direction of travel. And with that, they'd like to arrange a board meeting with the boards of the Housing Association and the ASELA board either before the end of this year or early next year, because they see themselves very aligned with what we're trying to do. So again, a good opportunity for ASELA moving forward. So earlier, just to also provide those links, we talked about digital connectivity, the links with this programme, because they're not in isolation. Having the housing associations on board helps in many ways. One of the things is bringing that whole housing stock and holistic approach to housing in South Essex, linking up how we get to those hard to reach residents who haven't got digital connectivity or can't afford. Obviously, having the housing association board, we've got a much fuller picture of that. The only area probably I haven't gone into as much as private landlords, but that's an area we're also going to work with as well. But just to give you an idea of that, there is links across these programmes. They're not done in isolation. And with that as well, sustainability, we're now looking at stock, not just council stock, we're looking at housing stock, and also looking at, and I've talked before about the stock that's currently there not just new shiny houses, because we do need to think about our residents that are already in properties that might need to look at sustainable energy moving forward. So that's again a really good opportunity working with these housing associations, because we can't pull all those levers without them. So again, I'd say that's it for now of a highlight. There'll be a more fundamental briefing moving forward around the schemes. Like everything, direction of travel, we're trying to meet that missed demand of 4,500 houses in South Essex. At the moment, are just over 2,000. So we know we need to work hard around that accelerating programme, but I think we've now built the foundations to be able to move that forward.
Give you that. I think the funding to recruit somebody to drive it is key, and I think we'll start to see real progress in that. You talked about an interim. That's to be recruited or in place.
Thank you, Chair. Just we've recruited an organisation called Inner Circle has done some work with us to cover that piece of work until they've worked with us on the programme already. They know it's a short arrangement because we want a permanent resource in that place. But what we don't want to do is gain the funding from Homes England and say we're not going to use the funding. So they're the best people fit to do that, and we've done that for the right procurement process as well.
So I guess my question is, when we get the resource in place, whether it's interim or whatever the right time to do, the interim resource or the more permanent resource to drive the programme, when do we think we could, as we've done today with digital, had a really good comprehensive report and update from Michael on it, when could we do something similar on the housing front? I'm particularly interested in getting these 5 sites, the locked up sites moving, unlocked, unblocked and moving forward. So when we start to do that, then we can really start to talk about things, bricks and mortar things we're doing, literally. So when do you think we might be able to do a proper update in terms of the housing programme in the same way Michael's done one for us today?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Subject to the session we're talking about having with the ASELA board, the intention would be to bring representatives from Homes England and the programme director here to have a sort of a high-level view and detailed view around the programme. There is obviously a macro level with regard to the whole of South Essex, but also individual. I'm sure as leaders you'll want to hear a bit about your own areas as well and how those schemes are coming forward. Obviously, what happens in Castle Point and what happens in Basildon affects us all with those housing numbers. So significant thing about that is making sure we collaborate together, and actually the benefit of Castle Point bringing forward housing or Basildon bringing forward housing is meeting that housing numbers for South Essex, and that's the really fundamental part of the partnership we've got. So the intention was, subject to agreement, we'd bring a report possibly next joint committee or the one after, but I think that session we're doing in the next 2 or 3 weeks could perhaps determine that.
Okay, good. Any comments on housing? No. All right. Anyone got any other business? I've got one final point to raise after Scott. I'll just come in at the end. Scott.
Yeah, another one that, again, similar to what I didn't put in the agenda, we want to focus much more detail on reports. Is, first of all, I'm delighted to have Tom Walker now, who I've let him embed in Essex, but not as long as he probably liked. So I've dragged him, and he's volunteered to support me as chair and vice chair on from a lead officer point of view for the programme, and also that he and I will look at developing the away day programme, particularly where with his experience about how this evolves and the investment zones piece. I think it's really important that the other programme that, again, Tom has volunteered, I'm sure that was the right word, to lead on is the sustainable transport connectivity. And apologies that Mark, I know who's quite unwell, would have been here to give us an update on that today. But we're not at the final session. I think the away day will be really good because we've not finally scoped that. But I know that officers across all of the councils, particularly from the three upper-tiers, working on that scoping document. And the point, again, about the connectivity of all the programmes, the 5G network link about, and that as part of the sustainable transport is really key. And it's one of those that leaders said they really want to focus on that sustainable transport because we can do all great things around housing and skills and everything else, but if we can't get around, what's the point? So that's, I know leaders were very strong on that, so I'm sure Tom will bring that back with the team at the away day and then for a future meeting. And as I say, what I'd say is it will probably be a minimum 3 weeks, but about 3 weeks' time we'll have that away day. The themes I've taken away, leaders, is obviously comms, then we're discussing the themes, and then for me it's about where is the evolution of the growth prospectus. Let's remind where we are. We've got a growth prospectus that is sound. What is the next stage of that, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel? So that is if members agree, Tom and I will prepare that workshop for about 3 weeks' time with all the chiefs and leaders in the room, Chairman.
Good. Thank you, Scott. I certainly think when we get together in 3 weeks, that we'll really be able to have some good conversations around that. Okay. Nobody else. Andrew.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I did allude to it. I have no idea how we would do it, but I really do think that we need to have some sort of mechanism where it would be possible to bring relevant cabinet members or portfolio holders to these meetings. I think that there are sometimes issues where it is far better for them to be hearing it straight away. I also think it future-proofs to an extent ASELA, because it means that other people are really plugged in, so that in the political vagaries of the way things are, there is always somebody that then can step up to the plate and is ahead of the curve with where we are rather than coming in cold. I don't know how we would do it or whether it's something that other members think is a good idea or not, but I just think that we should have the discussion or have a mechanism at some point to allow that to happen.
Thank you. I may have said it just before you arrived, but one of the things I want to do is, whilst we've got these strategic programmes, is no point just having a lead leader and a lead chief and a couple of assorted officers from different organisations. If we're going to sit down and talk economic growth and skills, I want all of the senior economic development officers across the 7 authorities in that room as they talk about it. Now, they may choose to turn up to this forum, but this is just to listen and get a summary update. But actually, the work needs to be done, the heavy lifting needs to be done around the table. So I really want to bring more officers into those programmes. I think is exactly what you're saying. You know, in the same way we're talking about actually getting comms officers to work with Adrian, we need economic development officers working together under an ASELA umbrella, if I can put it that way. Same around planning, housing, whatever it might be. Because people are talking about it, officers are aware of it, but I do suspect that a lot of them feel that they're not involved to the extent they might like to be. They know about ASELA, they hear good things about it, but really how's it impacting on what I do? So we've absolutely got to draw them in, and that's something for that workshop that will run in a few weeks' time. But we're all on the same page with that. We've got to get them in. Because as Kevin said, you know, ASELA has its programmes, but there's some fundamental things around just collaborating more effectively. You know, we had a brief chat. You know, if beforehand, if a local authority in this room is thinking, I've got to buy a load of bin trucks, maybe a quick phone call round from that service director to someone else saying, are you buying a load? Because could we do something together? A bit of buying power. Now, we've done that at a local level or a fairly micro level between Rochford and Brentwood, but actually we're all here as an association. So that's it, really. Jonathan, did you want to comment on that?
Just a session that seems to have gone down quite well today. We can pick it up on the away day, but having a portfolio approach to these meetings rather than perhaps covering all the programmes could mean then you bring the portfolio that represents that area rather than having every cabinet member for every council in this chamber, because we'd be like the European Commission. So
there's the doing, and then there's this to me this is a summary meeting. This is a touch base with senior people in South Essex, in local government, and we'll look at developing our co-option piece as well. You know, I think in part of that conversation. But the doing happens when we actually get the right people in the room to talk about specific areas of their expertise to how they can do it. And I can imagine they'll be sharing some fantastic ideas and coming up with stuff to take it on. So we're going to get there with ASELA, Andrew. That is the next level we're going to move to, and it's the right time to do it. So it's all good. Okay, no more. That just remains to me to make note that Andy Lewis is retiring, I understand, from Southend at the end of this month. Is that correct?
Next Friday, Chairman. Yes, it is correct. Yes.
Good. Well, I wanted to make a point of highlighting that, because I'm sure everybody in this room wishes you well in your retirement. What you find, you seem far too young to be retiring. I don't know. Local government does. You get out so early in local government. But we wish you all very well, Andy, with what you go on to next. But it was absolutely right that we should acknowledge your contribution at ASELA and note the fact that you're moving on. And whatever you come to do next, we hope you really have a great time doing it.
Chairman and members, thank you very much. I'm actually a little bit older than I might look, so and I'll leave it at that point. It's been an absolute great pleasure of mine to work with colleagues over many, many years, and really good to see that the ASELA partnership is beginning to leverage the impact that I think we all know that it can do. I think you're at our transition point. There's a lot of challenges in the world at the moment. And I think that your reset in November, and seeing how you take it on to that next level is a really, really good a good suggestion. And I will not be far. I shall be looking with great interest at what all of my colleagues are doing, and obviously care passionately that it's successful, because I and my family, my sons, all live in Essex. So let's hope it turns out in the way that we wish. But thank you, Chairman, for your kind comments, and other members. It's much appreciated.
Very good. Thank you, Andy. We wish you well, as we say. I'm sure we all do. Okay, if there's nothing more, I think that brings us to the end. Maybe just good time for you, Stephen. You've got to get to Buckinghamshire, I know. So thank you, everybody, for your attendance. Thought that was a really good meeting, and we've really got some good things to look forward to in the next few weeks, I'm sure, as well. Thank you.